You're listening to the Badger State Ball Podcast with Prep Baseball Wisconsin, breaking down the top high school prospects and featuring all things college baseball recruiting in a changing world. Hosted by Vinny Rotino, Josh Fields, and Andy Sroka, this is Badger State Ball.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Badger State Ball Podcast here. Awesome episode lined up for us with Hunter Mense, the assistant hitting coach for the Toronto Blue Jays. Before that, he served as the organization's minor league hitting coordinator, helped shape some of the game's best young bats as they made their way to the big leagues. He's from Missouri originally, All-American outfielder at Mizzou, got them to super regional there, I think as a junior, if I'm not mistaken, junior year. Spent a little time on the USA Collegiate National Team. That was the summer prior to getting drafted by the Florida Marlins at the time. Played 5 years of pro ball before transitioning into coaching. Just took a winding path naturally that brought him here to the big leagues with the Blue Jays. But just a really interesting background that he has, both in his educational experience that tied into the baseball athletic side of things. So with it being this Wisconsin-based podcast here, I figured a good place to start with, which is congrats on an awesome season with the Blue Jays. It was a lot of fun to watch, but it wasn't just the big names like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., just a little bit of the homegrown talent, Dalton Varsho, Marshfield, Wisconsin guy. I think you even crossed paths too with Danny Jansen, another Wisconsin dude. But if you just want to comment on the season and just how you've been able to reflect on it here just quick before we kind of get into some other in-depth stuff.
Yeah, sure. First off, appreciate you guys having me. It's always fun to talk about some of this stuff and just kind of get into either my past or what I think hitting development looks like or baseball development. I think it's a cool avenue. But yeah, it was an unbelievable season, I think, for us, obviously, just getting to where we did. I don't think a lot of people on the outside thought that we could get to that point. After 24, it was a tough year for us. Bo was hurt. We had a few more injuries. We sold a ton at the deadline. And I think everybody kind of forgot about what we had done the previous 2 years. In 22, we were the first wild card. In 23, we went to the playoffs too. And we went 2-out in both of those seasons, but made the playoffs both years. So it was a competitive team the 2 years that I was there, my first 2 years. 24 which wasn't a great year, and I think everybody, going into this year, it kind of wrote us off. I think for us, we all felt like, one, we made some moves. We traded for Jimenez, we signed Jeff Hoffman, we signed on Anthony Santander. So we did a few things, but I truly felt that if we just got a little bit more production and got back to some of the stuff that we had gotten to with some of our position players, we were going to be just fine. And I think what I was telling somebody this the other day. I think the baseball world in the United States you don't get to see the Blue Jays on a frequent occasion. We don't play on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. We're just not nationally televised as much as a lot of these other teams are, and so I think we kind of fly under the radar. And we had a great year. I mean, we were one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league from after the first month on, from May on. So it was a fun, exciting team, and I think we were built very similarly to the Brewers, a team that you guys are all probably really familiar with. And but every night it just felt like there was a different way that we were going to find to win the game offensively. We could score a ton, we could grind it out and score 3, and that was all we needed for that night. So I think our guys just bought into every night just figuring out a way to win, no matter how it was going to happen. And I think it was fun and got us to where we were. Shoot 2 outs away from winning the World Series, and about as close as you could get, but it was an unbelievable season.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun to watch. It felt like, I think you described it pretty well with the ties to the Brewers, but even that feels very Midwestern based in a way, and maybe that's just because we live here or something, but just that hard-nosed kind of approach. And so that team definitely has some shades of the Brewers and vice versa with just the in-game, the way the Blue Jays handle it, runs coming from every which way. And just congrats again. I thought it was a ton of fun to watch that. But going back into your background here, going from Mizzou all the way up to the big leagues and everywhere in between, it felt like coaching college hitters, eventual major league all-stars. But kind of looking back, at this point, what's your philosophy or moments or mentors that maybe shaped your philosophy as a hitting coach? I guess kind of a broad kind of question to start with, but just teeing off with that.
Yeah, I think it goes all the way back for me to the first baseball coach I ever had as my machine pitch coach when I was, I think, probably 6 or 7 years old. And I still have a relationship with him to this day, but it was also some of the best teams I'd ever been on. Were kind of early on, and he was a guy that didn't know really anything about baseball. And I think back on it now and even think back to some of the stuff that we did and how we went about it. But I do remember how he made me feel, and I remember how he made all the other kids on the team feel. And I go back to him being the best coach I ever had just because he just had this way about him that helped every player feel like they were the most important player in the world. And I think I've taken that from him and taken it to every step of the way that I've had coaching, because it doesn't matter if you're coaching 6-year-olds or if you're coaching 40-year-olds. I think everybody wants to feel that their worth is pretty high. They want to feel like they can be a part of something. And the best coaches I've ever had, they do that. They put you at the forefront, and you put a bunch of people together on a team who all feel like they're a huge part of something, then I think you're just going to get a huge lump sum of everybody just getting the most out of themselves, and then the team ends up rising because of it. And so he was kind of the first. And then when I got to college, I played for Coach Jameson at Missouri, who was an unbelievable coach too. I coached under him at Missouri as an assistant as well. And then I'd be remiss to not talk about a guy named Rick McGuire, he was a sports psychologist at the University of Missouri when I was there. And he also was the head track and field coach. I struggled through my junior year. I sat down with him at one point. I took one of his classes at one point. And then kind of when I got back into coaching at the University of Missouri after I got done playing, I went through and I got my master's in sports psychology. So then he kind of became a mentor towards me, just from what it looked like to coach kind of in he called it a positive coaching model. I would call it just kind of caring a little bit more than other coaches and finding ways to care. But I think all those experiences and those coaches kind of put together into one, I think helped me kind of mold me as a coach. And then I think the technical pieces, kind of the more intricate pieces of coaching, I've just kind of learned throughout the years. I've always been, I think as a player, I was like this, but as a coach, I think you hit this, you fast forward it a little bit even more, but just the intricacies of hitting, the technical pieces, the game planning parts, how to create a culture, how to create an environment. I think all those things, I fell in love with all that. And I think now there's a ton of access to a lot of different hitting stuff online, whether it's through Instagram, Twitter, whatever it may be. I think there's plenty of things that you can become more intelligent with, or if you want to dive into some stuff. So I think from there, I've gotten to know a ton of hitting people in the world. And then I think this past year, to kind of put a bow on it, the hitting coach that we had, it was David Popkins. He came over from the Twins, and he was just multifaceted with everything he did, and understanding the swing, understanding game planning, understanding how to change swings through environment-based training, anything and everything that I think you need to have as a coach, he was pretty well versed in. And I think the more you get into coaching, you're going to have these experiences that have brought you to that point. If you just keep learning and keep growing, I think you can become a pretty good coach. And I've been incredibly fortunate to have plenty of good coaches that I played under, and then plenty of coaches I've worked with that have just kind of helped me throughout my career.
Hunter, yeah, no, that's awesome. Vinny, you follow up now.
Well, yeah, I was just going to follow up, Hunter. So, obviously, Vinny Routino here. Hunter, how you doing, buddy? Hunter and I were actually locker mates in the 2010 run for the Jacksonville Suns, okay, Southern League Championship. And there is a lot of things that I know about Hunter Mense, but the fact that you got a psychology degree, a master's in sports psychology after you were done playing, right?
Yeah.
Getting into coaching. That's something I did not know about you, and that's I can't imagine something that would be more valuable than that as a hitting coach, right? Because how much of hitting is psychological? I mean, and you talk about all the different facets and the nuances that you have at your fingertips now, all the different tools, all the different understandings of what it takes, all the different kinds of training, right? Chaos training, all the different new age kind of ideas that are in baseball right now. I mean, you can get into the weeds, and we want to get into the weeds with you a little bit on some of that stuff, but I can't imagine anything more valuable than having that knowledge of how to connect with players and to help them feel like I love what you said early. Your 6-year-old coach gave you that feeling and gave everybody that feeling on the team that they were part of it and they were valuable to the team. And that makes you feel great. And so how much of, I guess getting to the question here is your degree in sports psychology, how much is that kind of maybe give a specific example of if you can, of how it's helped you as a coach kind of navigate the waters of being a hitting coach? Because I can't imagine anything harder than that in all sports. Yeah,
it's challenging, no doubt. But being a hitting coach is challenging because the skill that we're trying to teach, I think, is the most challenging thing in the world too. And so you're dealing with failures at an incredible rate. And I remember when I first started going through my degree at the University of Missouri, one of the first classes that I took, so I had coached for a little bit before I started with the program. So I had been an undergraduate assistant and then a volunteer, and then I kind of got into the grad program. I had some experience coaching, but I remember one of my first classes I attended was essentially you were learning how to interview people and talk to people in a therapeutic session, and just some of the skills that you would need to draw stuff out of people, ways to listen. And I'll never forget, I would have that class probably at 1 o'clock every afternoon. At 2:30, 3 o'clock, I would go over to the baseball field. And I just felt the similarities of what I was learning in those classes it was directly affecting how I was coaching and how I was listening, how I was talking to the players on a daily basis. Because I think at the end of the day, every coach will say they're in it because they care. But I think there's coaches that are really good at showing how they care, and then there are coaches that do care, but they have a hard time showing that they care and helping the player to feel like they care. And I think through some of those courses, I think a lot of that just kind of allowed me to be able to get deeper into it. I'll leave the name out of it, but this was my first year in major leagues coaching. And this was probably, 3 weeks into the season. And we had an older player on the team. And at this point, he was DHing. He would play a little bit. But for the most part, he was kind of a DH. So he spent a ton of time with me in the cage, kind of in between innings, between his at-bats. And I think he had struck out twice. And after the second strikeout, he had just blown up. Bats were shattered. Helmets were shattered. I hear him coming down the stairs, and I'm sitting in the cage, and he walks down and sits next to me. And I just kind of let him sit there for a second. I knew he had wanted to say something. I knew he had wanted to spend time with somebody, or else he wouldn't have come sat down by me. So I sensed it, I felt it, but I knew that he needed some space to kind of get some stuff out. And he looks over at me, he goes, "Hunter, I don't think I can do this anymore. I think I've lost it." And I look over at him and I said, "Sure, maybe that's the case. Maybe it is. Maybe you have lost it, but I know right now you haven't lost it, and you're going to get it back really quickly. It's just a matter of time. You're one of the best in the world at what you do. You'll be just fine." And I think in that moment, it was just like this processing and some of these things that I had learned, and being able to ask really good questions to help him to feel like he had somebody in his corner, somebody with him. Sure enough, next inning, I think he goes out, and it's the 7th inning. It's a tie game, and they have a leverage arm in. He hits a home run, and he absolutely goes nuts. He comes back, and he was like, "Dude, that was unbelievable. I don't know how I just did that." I'm like, "You're still the same guy that you were 30 minutes ago when you were having tears run down your face, talking about you weren't going to have it. You were finished, and here we are." And I think I tell that story, one, because like there's ways to help guys feel that way, but two, I think from a coaching perspective, I don't think people realize how challenging it is for guys at the big league level, and then how challenging for us coaches it is sometimes too, because they are they are on the biggest stage where there's the most eyes on them. And so you think that, okay, they've reached their childhood dream of playing in the big leagues and there can't be any stress to it. They're making a ton of money. But I think with all that becomes even more stress at times. And I think having the background that I do and a lot of guys that I've coached with, the best ones, I would have thought they had PhDs in sports psychology and in counseling psychology with the way that they ask questions. It's just kind of more natural. But I think the cream rises to the top with a lot of those guys, and naturally they become really good coaches because they have some of that.
I got to ask a follow-up to that real quick, Hunter. So how do you not live and die with every single at-bat with every single one of these guys? Because clearly you do care that much, and the great coaches do care that much about their players. How do you not do that? I mean, I would be an emotional wreck in that role.
Yeah.
How do you stay
honestly,
so even keel?
I think you can show emotion, and I think players appreciate when you show emotion because they do feel that. One of the best things you can do in a therapeutic session is kind of mimic the emotion that they're giving. Because if you're mimicking an emotion that somebody's giving you, they automatically feel that you're in it with them. So it's okay. I think if you're always trying to be stoic, I think they don't see you as a human being at times. Like, it's okay to feel emotion. It's okay to be in it with them. And I think they can sense that. But I think more than anything, you can be in it with them. You can be down with them when they need you to be down with them. But then there are other times when you have to be the guiding light for them, when they need a pick-me-up. They need somebody to be stoic. They need somebody to be steady with their routine or with their work. And I think more than anything, I think the more I've been in it in the big leagues is there are just so many at-bats. There are so many times that they're going to go stand up there in the box. And at that time, it feels like it's the end of the world. It feels like, man, the world is crumbling and I can't get out of this rut. But I think for me, I've seen so many guys get through things. I've seen it turn around so quickly that, like, trying to provide that perspective is always great. So in my mind, I always have this perspective, this positive perspective of, it is going to turn around. You are going to be okay. And I think the more you can believe kind of what you're saying, then you're going to be in a great spot. Because I truly do believe I'm going to get the most out of the players. Coaches are going to get the most out of the players if they feel and they understand how much we believe in them. And a lot of times we believe in them as coaches. They don't believe in themselves sometimes as much as we believe in them. And as soon as they start believing in us, I think that belief in themselves starts to grow too. So it's challenging. You do live and die with a lot of swings and a lot of outcomes. And again, I think it's okay. I think it's okay to, like, sit down next to them in the dugout and be down with them for a little bit because they want that. They need that. They need somebody to feel like they're in it, but you got to snap out of it just like they do. And I think providing the example is a big key.
That's awesome.
Go ahead. That's awesome. No, just kind of transitioning here. I think Nick you'll have a question here in a sec, just as we're kind of relating this back to, like, the high school age hitter and so on. But that kind of just sparked a follow question for me that I had was just when you're referring to sort of like these mental, like almost like this checklist, kind of sitting with them, going through like very much the mental aspects of the game and the challenges of like at bat to at bat. But because right now it feels like there's this overwhelming feeling, I'm sure, of like, the videos you're getting, everything is related to like, data metrics or like, the actual mechanics of the swing, like what to change, what to tweak, what not, and so on. But it's very interesting, like hearing from you, because it's almost like, sure, you know those things. You have a ton of professional and like personal experience with like, swing changes, mechanics, and so on. But like you're in the dugout, this major league dugout. You just, we're part of this awesome World Series, and yet like you're kind of talking about these things that don't, you would expect, I guess, the highest level of like, this is what to do and what not to do with your swing and things like that. And but do you think is that being maybe neglected, the mental aspect, the positivity, even from like these high school age kids and younger? Like, is that something you identify with as well?
Of course. Yeah, of course. I think we as a society just fall in love with the quick fixes. And a lot of times the quick fix is like, yeah, you make this change to your swing and you're automatically going to be a great player. And sure, there are technical pieces to every swing that I think each guy needs to kind of possess. But I think more than anything, and I can go even further of like, I think so many kids end up falling out of love with the game because of coaching. and sometimes bad coaching. And it's not necessarily that coaches are like trying to be bad coaches. I think just a lot of times they lose sight of I need to also make this enjoyable and fun for the kids too. And it's even the same way for dudes that are 35 years old. They got into it at one point when they were really young because they truly loved it and they were competitive, and all of a sudden you realize that they were good at what they were doing, and then they start rolling with it. And so I think like if we can foster just the love for the game and the passion for the game, our game as a whole is going to continue to grow because you're just going to get better players that last longer in the game. And baseball is going to draw from a wider range of kids if more kids are continuing on with their journey. And so I think like I'm giving a talk at a convention later this off season, and the whole premise of the talk is just going to be like, I know you care as coaches, but here are some of the ways to show that you do care as coaches, because I do think we can work on a swing, we can work on all of that stuff. But I promise you, if the kid doesn't know that you care about him or he doesn't feel that you care about him, it's only going to get you certain ways. And I think we as Major League Baseball, as a industry, I think there for a while we were just hiring people that were really good with data and tech. And I think we lost sight a little bit of, you can be really good at that stuff, but if you can't get it to the players, if you can't relate to the players, if you can't do some of the things that I think somewhat older school coaches were able to do, then all the stuff that you know is just kind of for loss. And then you kind of like are stuck with, okay, well, that was my only chip. That was the one thing I knew. Now I'm not quite sure what to do as a coach. And so I think the relationship part of it and the care factor, if you do have those things, you get to a lot of the other things. If you're a learner, you're a constant learner, you're going to figure some of those things out as a coach. So I think at every level, and if I look at every coach that's successful at every coach successful at every kind of level, they have that. They have this feel of like being really good. I've gotten to know Vitello really well, and Vitello has climbed the ladders from being. I'll use this as an example. My freshman year, he was the pitching coach at Missouri. That man had never stepped foot on a mound in his life. He had never once pitched. He had no idea. He had never done anything to know how to tell Max how to throw a curveball. He didn't know anything about pitching, but they threw him into that role. We lost somebody, and so they threw him into that role. Max will still tell you that he's one of the best pitching coaches he's ever had. And he helped Max to become a first rounder and an All-American at Mizzou, and Aaron Crow was kind of the same way. Like, you go through the list of all the guys that he coached from a pitching standpoint at Missouri, and he turned them into really good pitchers and had no idea what he was doing. So there's an argument right there of like the technical parts that people fall in love with. Yeah, there are parts that you can manipulate and get better at, but if you have that other, whatever it may be, have those people skills, the ability to connect, you have some of those things, you're going to get a lot more out of your players as well.
Yeah, that's an awesome story there. I didn't even realize that the pitching coach side of the Vitello journey, like that. That's awesome. Nick, yeah. I know you wanted to ask something here.
Yeah. So when you're looking at evaluating a younger hitter, like a high school hitter, what is the first thing that you look at in their swing or in their approach when you're scouting them?
I would say, so when I coached in Missouri, I kind of overlooked this a little bit. If I'm looking, and because I think it takes a while to identify some of these things, but I would say that if a kid is almost like enjoy watching the undersized kid that has bat to ball skills. Like if a kid is swinging at a pitch within the strike zone and they're moving it forward, whether it's hit hard or not, but they're consistently putting the bat on the ball, I promise you, if that kid plays long enough and gets to the point where they can get strong and they can get more physical, those skills will start to really play. But again, I think like that's not the sexy thing. And so a lot of kids end up falling back and they aren't as exposed to higher levels because they aren't hitting for power. But a lot of times I think younger kids are hitting for power and high school kids are hitting for power because of the physicality that they have. So I would say one, just a bat to ball skill sort of profile. And then the other thing that I'm always fascinated by, and because I think there's a there's a rhythmic piece to this that a lot of times can't be duplicated. But if a kid can make up timing they can cover a really slow pitch, they can cover a really fast pitch. They have this timing window that can extend, and it always looks like it's a smooth swing. Those are the kids that I think as they get older, you'll see them grow into their bodies as well, and you see them tap into some power. And but it's the same thing. It's a kid that. So I guess if I'm summing those two things up, it's a kid that can always hit a ball if it's in the strike zone, and it's a kid that can always hit a ball if there's some added or subtracted from the pitch velocity. And then how they're doing that, I don't really care. Like, I think that's the uniqueness in hitting and uniqueness in baseball is that there's a ton of different ways to do it. And I have a 6-year-old son, and I'm a huge believer in I'm just going to throw a bunch of balls at him, and I don't care what he swings. I don't care if he swings at pitches over his head. I don't care if he swings at pitches that are bouncing, but I just want him to swing, and I want him to have some intent to hit the ball hard, and he's going to learn just how to hit it just consistently, and that's all I'm going to care about, because I think as he gets older, a lot of those things will kind of fine-tune themselves, and I'm not going to teach him where to put his hands. I'm not going to teach him how to swing. I'm just going to kind of let him go and let him flow, because I've seen over the course of time so many guys do it just a million different ways that you wouldn't think would work. And I think a lot of times it happens in pro ball where a guy was successful in high school, and then they get to pro ball and it's like, well, we got to change this. I don't know if that's going to work, because it's unique and it's different. But a lot of times those guys that are unique and different have found solutions that a lot of people haven't been able to find. And I think they aren't things that we would have coached, but they're things that they have figured out. So I love the athleticism. I love the bigger moves that you see with kind of younger kids at times. And I would never coach those out of kids.
So Hunter, how do you explain then when guys do make changes? Like, so that at the start of your career, if you would have taken your swing when you first got into college baseball to your last at bat in pro ball, I'm sure it looked different. Mine certainly did. So how, if you're saying a lot of guys do it a lot of different ways, and so these key kind of features of their profile, bat to ball, probably hand quickness, the ability to decipher, spin, see spin and decipher velocity changes between maybe fastball and changeup and stuff like that. So like those are the most important elements of a hitter, but you do see guys change, right? And they do make changes. So do you think that is important in making changes? We're talking on the high school level now. And if so, maybe give some advice as to like, okay, so like don't try to make your swing. I always tried to make my swing look like Jose Bautista's. Like never could. I had the ugliest swing in the world. You remember?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I got it done. But so like I feel like kids try to maybe like chase something, especially high school level. They chase something that maybe that's not necessarily good for them to do. And if so, like what maybe key changes that they should or could make, or maybe just avoid it altogether, especially on the high school level?
I think, this might get pretty long.
That's right.
I think that what happens is, and you can see a guy change a swing from one year to the next. What I think is unique is figuring out how they made those changes to get from the first swing that they had to the second swing. I can tell you that probably 75, if not more % of the time, those changes that they made were somewhat of an external based change. It was the work that they were doing. It was like a machine that they were facing, maybe had a little bit more carry to it consistently, and that changed the way that they were setting up because they wanted to be taller to be able to cover a high spin sort of pitch. And then like they end up having success because that's the one pitch they needed to be able to cover, right? So then you look at the side by side of, okay, this swing, and wow, that is a ton different. And I used to get so frustrated when I would hear players talk about the kind of the question that you're asking me, like, I saw you change your swing. Like your swing has changed from this time to this time. You had to have had this forethought of like, I'm going to change my swing to get to this, and you did. And I used to get so frustrated with big leaguers and even younger players too, high school, college guys, and they would say, no, I didn't try to change. I didn't know what I was doing, but yet something changed. And a lot of times it's within the work. It's within the constraints that you're putting on kids or putting on players that changes a lot of those things. And sometimes we we do it unintentionally, and it's like, oh no, that went the wrong way, and that changed. And a lot of times it is very intentional on our parts, I think, as coaches to, I know that if we get really internal with how we're thinking and how we're thinking about trying to swing, we're going to get bogged down. But I also have gotten creative enough as a coach to know that I can make some changes with some of these guys if I just put a different setting on a machine, if I flip from a different spot, if I throw breaking balls along with the fastballs, if we do heavy balls, if I do like really light balls that have carry to them, I know that I can change a lot of parts of these swings. All they have to do is I have to help them to be problem solvers, and I'm giving them the constraints. And throughout it, like you'll see, I'll give you an example with Vladdy. Vladdy's everybody knows kind of who he is and kind of what his profile is. Vladdy can be really flat with the barrel, and it's flat and around. And so he can cover like some pretty good fours, but getting stuff in the air and stuff that's breaking down is a real challenge for him. We can talk to him all we want about being able to change and keep the barrel upright and get a little bit more vertical to get a little bit more loft in the swing. If he's thinking about those things, I promise you, when he's facing the dudes that he's facing, he's going to have a really tough time, right? So if we go in the cage and we put a big 12-6 breaking ball at the bottom of the zone, guess what? His posture starts to change. You'll see the barrel start tipping a little bit more to get a little bit more vertical, and then you'll see him start driving balls in the air. And then you'll look at it before and after and be like, oh man, he definitely tried changing that. He didn't. It was just what we were putting kind of in the machine and what we were giving him that helped him to kind of change the path of the swing. So I think as coaches in high school, you can play a ton of games. Like, kids are competitive. You put something on the line and you give them constraints of like, if you have a kid that's not swinging hard enough, play a game with them where, hey, all we're trying to do, I don't care if you swing and miss, but all we're trying to do is hit this ball through something. And the language that you can use can change how the intent starts to play out. If you have a kid that's hitting too many ground balls and it's got a choppy sort of swing, you can put big breaking balls. You can start throwing balls really high and having them hit them towards the top of the cage. And guess what? The swing is going to change. And a lot of times the setup starts to change without you having to manipulate and tell him, hey, swing this way. And I think there are absolutely times and there are ways that you can do it to where, and there's certain kids where you can get really internal and they can be thoughtful and they can work through some of that because they have really good proprioception of their brain to their bodies and they can make some of those changes. But I promise you that like 90% of baseball players aren't like that. The ones that stand in the box, they're going to need to make their changes kind of through different modalities. And I think that's the tough part and most challenging part about coaching is like, a lot of times we're changing things and we don't realize we're changing things, whether like it's flipping underhand or throwing overhand. And if kids are only seeing those sorts of things, whether it's flipping underhand or overhand or from angles, or they're in a tiny little cage or they're in a huge cage, that will change kids' swings just by the environment that you're putting them in. And I don't think people realize that there's such a big part of it. And I think I'll give you this example too. Last off season, I gave lessons. And I gave a lesson to a kid. His mom brought him in. Kid was 8 years old, okay? And the kid was really good. And the swing was like, if I'm watching his swing, if you give the kid a light bat, you put a light bat in his hands, and I'm watching the swing, I'm like, I could see that swing on TV. Like, that's a good enough swing that it would completely play. It would be fast enough. But you get a heavier bat in his hands, sure, it breaks down a little bit because he doesn't have the strength to support it. So the kid and I would just do a bunch of stuff. I would just toss slow ones into him. I'd toss fast ones into him. We would make games out of it of like, hit it over here. I would throw balloons at him. I would always throw stuff that's moving in different directions. So he's just creating barrel creativity is what I like to call it. So all parts of the zone, making up timings, all sorts of stuff. And I would point different places out. And we would play horse. You could have to hit it here, hit it here. It doesn't seem sexy, right? Like it doesn't seem like that's a great way of going about changing a swing or helping a kid get better. I know that every time that the kid left, the kid was in a great mood and the kid loved doing it. So the kid wasn't going to get bored. He wasn't going to be bogged down with doing too much. It was about 3 or 4 weeks into it. The kid comes one day and he was like, I just had another hitting lesson with my other hitting coach. And I was like, hold on, you have another hitting coach that you work with? and I was like, you're only 8 years old. It seems like a lot. You enjoy it? He's like, yeah, my mom just thinks that you don't do enough stuff to help my swing, like my actual swing. So we go to another coach that coaches my swing and how to swing and what I should do. And then we come to you because it's more fun and we're doing different things of hitting it. I'm like, oh, okay. I said, that seems like a little much, but like it kind of went to, and I think that's what's happened a lot of times with high school and younger age kids is I think parents get exposed to like some of the social media stuff that we should be changing swings and we should be doing this with their swing. And I think parents get very anxious to be able to change the swings and be able to do different things with the swings. And that's not what Vladdy looks like. We need to change the swing to look like Vladdy, or we need to do these things. And a lot of times you're just going to get a kid that becomes really confused. I watch my son, again, he's 6. I watch him go to baseball and then he gets to his game and like he'll step out at times, which whatever, I don't care. He'll figure it out. And somebody will tell him, hey, keep your toes on the line. Next thing you know, all he's focused on is keeping his toes on the line, and he's swinging and missing at every pitch, but his toes are staying on the line. So for him, he's accomplishing everything that the coach is asking him to do. So it's like they're challenging things like that where you still want athleticism, and I promise you can make a lot of these changes without realizing you're making changes, and good positive changes, without having to have them make the actual physical change that you're wanting.
That's such a good answer.
That's really cool. Yeah. No, I was just gonna say it just feels like like a very practical way of starting, just because it is so intricate. Obviously, we're talking about hitting, and like you just don't know what you don't know, I guess. But like starting from like this very like broad, like what you're saying, like okay, I don't hit it on the ground enough, or I do too much, and like kind of finding more creative ways to do it without looking up or Googling or looking on Instagram of like mechanical changes, like it's sort of like results based or something. And if you're creative enough, like the swing will kind of adapt and change like on the go. And it sounds like it's kind of more beneficial to maybe approach it that way, at least initially, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I think, and I could say this too, I think one of the challenges with baseball is like we can take athleticism out of baseball players really quick. And I think that's why there's such a benefit in kids playing and doing a bunch of different things, but you see it a lot from a hitting standpoint. And I can go back to like watching my son's team play, and like you have the parents saying, just hit it, just make contact, just put it in play. And so like a lot of these kids start to lose athleticism because they will do things. They want to be coached. They're told that they need to listen. So they start doing things just to kind of put the ball in play. And you see athleticism just starting to be sapped over and over again, as opposed to like, let's just let them go. Like I've worked with Bo Bichette for the last 6 or 7 years. You watch that dude move in the box, he is the most athletic guy you would ever see. If he was in a different scenario, if he wouldn't have hit from the very beginning, somebody would have said, you can't hit like that. You have to take away this big turn. You have to take away with how you're turning the bat. But he's always hit, so nobody ever told him you can't do those things. And he was confident enough in himself and the things that he was doing that he wasn't going to change those things anyways, even if somebody told him to. So I think that's one of the issues is like if at the first sign of struggle, what do we do as coaches? Do we work with what way they have, or do we try to fit them into the box that we think that they should be fit into? And then we're sapping them and taking away from a lot of the stuff that they've done previously. And then that's when you see this cycle start to happen of they lose confidence and, man, you don't believe in me or you don't believe in the swing. Then shoot, I don't believe in the swing because I haven't been to this level. Maybe I don't know either. So I think there is such value in helping guys and kids to be able to learn about their swing and just find creative ways to get things done, to be athletic.
It's such a good answer, Hunter. And before Josh asks a question here, for the listener, I just wanted to define internal focus. What Hunter was referencing to is like, put your elbow here in this position, and your elbow has to slot here as you swing, as you start to, kind of attack the baseball in your swing. Right. And then the external focus that Hunter's talking about is hit the ball at the top of the cage. And then he is kind of referencing how the mechanics will change in a swing when you have guys. And you're saying 90% are more externally focused then, huh? That's really
I would at least.
Okay,
I promise. And I think it's just the way that we are programmed to learn. Like you will find changes, you will make changes based upon a lot of those motor preferences that you have. But like thinking through it, it's a very rare case that guys can process like what you're telling them or how to move, and then it doesn't come out yipped. Like that's when you see people that start to get the yips, I promise you, all they're thinking about is how to swing their arm, how to get their hand back up here. And you're doing all those things while you're doing an athletic movement, and you just see guys just start to get locked up here, and then you see it in the box too. It's the exact same.
Yes. And then also, I just wanted to add a little anecdote. So in 2016, after I was done playing, it was 2017, I was done playing and I was scouting, and I had the Blue Jays, and I thought scouting was so easy because I had Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette on the same Lansing Lugnuts team, and I put roll sixes on both of them. I'm like, this is easy. These guys are obviously going to be all-stars. So just a little anecdote, like, to back up what Hunter said about how good Bo Bichette was. And scouting is not that easy. But so anyway, Josh had a really good question here. Go ahead, Josh, on the approach to things in the box.
Yeah, so I mean, you were talking earlier about how big leaguers, they're mostly thinking about like stuff that they can do, like game planning wise and whatnot. Like, how do you get like amateur hitters who are focused on mechanics mostly, and just like you were saying, the internal stuff to really just focus on it, and what can they really take away from like, big leaguers and like how they go about their business in the box?
Yep, I think the thing that I always ask guys, our catcher Alejandro Kirk is one that comes to mind when I have this thought. Is one of the first questions I always ask him is, were you being competitive? And a lot of times when he answers that question, he'll tell me, no, I wasn't. I'm like, okay, well, what were we doing that was taking away from your competitiveness? Because being a competitor in the big leagues is, if you have that, you are starting at a floor level where a lot of people don't have. And if the answer is no, he wasn't being competitive, then we have to get down to the reasons as to why he wasn't. And a lot of times it was like his work that he was doing in the cage got too internal, and next thing you know, he's trying to do it in the game, and then he loses sight of just being competitive. Or he's trying to cover too many pitches, and he's too fearful of striking out, or he's too fearful of getting to two strikes. So he's trying to cover a fastball up. He's also trying to cover the splitter down. He's trying to create multiple swings to be able to do it at once, when that's really impossible to be able to do. So I think like every player hitter should have their stock approach. And when I say a stock approach, it's like, I'm facing this guy. It's a spring training at bat. I have no idea what he has. I'm going to stick with my strengths. My strengths are, I'm going to look in the middle, and I'm going to try to shoot a ball into left center field. And if I get an off-speed pitch, I'm going to be a little bit early, and I'll be able to get the head out and go to right field with it, whatever. So I think everybody has that stock approach that they have, and that kind of works based off your strengths. I think then deeper into it, once you start to get to know like the pitchers that you're facing, you can get really detailed into, okay, I'm going to look in. I know that my strengths are more like to left center, but I know that he likes to come in. So I'm going to give myself a chance on a pitch middle to in. I'm going to try and get the head out on something early in the count. And then I think it gives you this kind of guiding light as to how the at bat is going to play out and how you're going to work through the at bat. But I think more so than anything, it's like, how direct can I be with what is the task? What is the task at hand? And a lot of times, what is the game giving you? A lot of times there's you just look out there and the game is telling you, okay, you just need to get this run home from third. I don't care really how you do it, but you got to figure out how to get the guy home from third. Same thing, there's a runner at second base. It's a close game. We got to get to that guy to third, because the guy behind me is really good at hitting with the guy at third with less than 2 outs. I have to figure out a way to put a ball in play and just move it to the right side. So the game will give you all sorts of these indicators as to what you should be doing. And I think like the really good players, they feel that and they sense that, and they can kind of roll with the game. But I would again say that like the competitive spirit must precede everything and anything when it comes to it. And if you feel like you're starting to get too bogged down by the information, whether it's from an approach standpoint or too bogged down from a swing standpoint, your competitiveness is just going to go straight down. So it's like you're always checking yourself on, am I being competitive? Am I just trying to go out and compete? Because if you are, then you've trusted that the work that you put in is good and there's nothing you can do at that point. And you're trusting that the approach that you have is the right approach. Because I talk about it all the time. If I go up to a player and I say, okay, what are you trying to do against this guy? And he gives me something and I think it is completely off base and like, man, I don't know if that's going to play, but he is super convicted in it, I'm not going to say a word. because a very convicted plan, even if it might not be the right one, is probably the right one for him in that moment. And if you start to question and say, you know what, I think you might try and do this to him, then I think you're going to get that kid starting to question himself, or the player to start to question themselves, and they go up there kind of unsure of to what they want to do, and then they're caught right in the middle. So like for us, I think more times than not, we'll talk about first pitches a lot, and we'll talk about, hey, sit on this pitch, first pitch. And if we get it and they're fully committed to sitting on that pitch, first pitch, they're going to crush it most times than not, because they're elite hitters. And if you know what's coming, you're probably going to hit it really well. So a lot of the times, I think that in itself, just the competitiveness, I go back to it, the competitiveness, you have that, nothing else gets in the way. You're just directed by the things you need to be directed towards in those moments.
No, just again, another phenomenal answer, Hunter. We could probably talk to you all day. I know you got to run. Hunter, can't thank you enough for being on. Again, I think there's so many different little nuggets and things that not only players but coaches and even parents can learn from listening to this conversation. This was absolutely phenomenal. I appreciate you getting real detailed and giving us some specific examples of your prowess as a coach. You've done a phenomenal job. Obviously, keep it up with the Blue Jays, and then hopefully we'll see a Brewers Blue Jays World Series next year, and keep you guys on the schneid again next year with a championship. But no, it was great. Really appreciate you coming on, Hunter, and man, can't thank you enough for this.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. I had a blast.
All right, well, that was Hunter Mense from the Toronto Blue Jays. Again, the assistant hitting coach with them. Thought it was super informative. And Vinny, I thought you put it perfectly, too. Just like it wasn't just the high school player or whatever kind of player. It was the parent. It was the coach. Like that, I think you could find takeaways from that. Honestly, it was like there were some life lessons in there. I felt like even of just like just your day-to-day of just mix things up or – I just felt like I got a lot out of that personally, so hope you guys listening did too.
Yeah, Andy, I mean, and Josh and Nick, like, we could have probably spent another 3 hours with Hunter. I mean, you could sense how thoughtful his answers were and how much time that he has spent trying to figure this thing out, which you never figure out. I learned literally a nugget, something with every answer that he gave me personally. I mean, and I've been in the game – how many, couple of over 2.5 decades now on the professional side of things. It just goes to show how much there is to learn and how much there is to know about the game of baseball, and you never stop learning and you never stop you just never stop trying to figure it out, and you never do figure it out. Kind of that's the point.
Yeah.
And so it's just it's a journey that you go on once you get hooked by this game of baseball that never stops, and it's cool because Hunter enlightened me quite a bit today with that interview. It was really good.
Yeah, same here. I thought just like finding more creative like solutions felt like a really, and not even like creative solutions, like thinking you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like I guess it was more of like simplifying, whittling it down, but like rather than figure out like is my elbow too high or something like that. Like what are you doing like that you want to do more of or less of, and kind of thinking more like big picture in those terms, and then like apply it, like because to me it was interesting because I was like, man, if I were like a high school kid or something, and I had thought about things that way instead of more like those like really like small level like details like with the mechanical changes, like it would have been more fun to like I could have come up with like, okay, I want to hit the ball like in the air more, like I can figure out a way like within my own drill work or something like that to work on that, and like the swing change will come naturally. But in my head back then, like it was way more like, okay, I need to figure out what I need to do mechanically at the very like microsecond level of the swing to like break down, which that's a much harder like answer to find, and you're probably not going to find it because it's so difficult, but
it's elusive.
So just trying to simplify things, and like the swing changes will kind of come more naturally. Like if that's happening at like the World Series dugout level, you know what I mean, then there's no reason you can't apply it in your own work, especially this off season, which we're in the thick of right now. So huge thank you to Hunter for taking the time out. Thought that was awesome, and hopefully we can get him back on and some point soon, just because there's, like Vinny said, a ton more I think we could have gotten into. But anything else you guys want to address before we just kind of wrap things up here?
Nick,
Think we're
Josh,
all good.
anything?
I think we're all good.
Sweet. All right, guys. Well, I mean, if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss future episodes. We got plenty more great guests lined up this off season that I think will be fun to get into. You know, links back to the Wisconsin baseball scene, and the bigger picture too is, you know, it's National Signing Day is coming up. You know, looking at recruiting tips, tricks, that sort of thing. We'll kind of have it all here on our podcast. So we'll keep coming at it weekly here every Wednesday now. It seems like we've gotten back into the rhythm with things, which is fun. So we'll have a ton more lined up here in the near future. But I think that's it, guys. Well, thank you for listening to the Badger State Ball podcast. I think that's as creative an intro as we have right now, Vinny. We'll keep working on
And
that.
go team. Well, it's
my bad.
Go Team Cheese.
Go Team Cheese. Awesome. Thank you, guys. See you next week.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening to the Badger State Ball Podcast. To keep tabs on our latest events, rankings, and coverage, subscribe or follow the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, and follow us over at PrepBaseballWI on X and at PrepBaseballReport.com/Wisconsin. Until next time.